The U.S. government deploys an elite military disaster response team following the social crisis in Haiti. In Turkey, President Erdogan visited the site of the coal mine explosion in Amasra, where at least 41 people died. Rescue efforts continue. The United Nations warns of increasing hunger in the world. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news, and we do so in Haiti. The State Department confirmed the deployment of an elite U.S. military team in response to the social crisis in the country. According to U.S. State Department spokesman Vedant Patel, the disaster response team, also known as DART, continues to closely monitor the situation in Haiti and is working with international partners to determine the needs and provide additional assistance if necessary. Patel also noted that Washington plans to pass a resolution at the UN Security Council on Monday that would establish a mechanism to impose international sanctions on gang leaders. This measure would be in addition to the imposition of visa restrictions on those involved in gang activities announced earlier this week. The government of Panama ratified its commitment to continue the dialogue with the social organizations that paralyzed the country last July against the high cost of living. In a statement issued from Palacio de las Garzas, the authorities indicated that they would respect the proposal of the Catholic Church to restart the second phase of the talks on October 28th. The statement also expresses that they should comply with the installation of the so-called single table of dialogue to generate proposals that contribute to improve the social conditions of the country. In a collective statement, the union and community groups cite that they will continue the struggle for the rights of the working people. In Brazil, authorities warned that the number of citizens registered to use weapons during Jair Bolsonaro's administration tripled compared to the last 15 years. The number of Brazilians registered as hunters, shooters, and collectors of firearms increased considerably during the current government, when Bolsonaro took office and started a change in the country's gun policy. The figure jumped from 171,431 between 2003 and 2018 to 549,831. Likewise, this year alone, authorities registered 207,081 firearms, more than in the entire period between 2015 and 2018. The Argentinian justice authorized the departure of the last group of crew members of teleSUR's Venezuelan plane who were being held illegally in that country. Federal Judge Federico Villena ruled that the rest of the crew lacked merit since there was insufficient evidence to prosecute them for the crime of financing terrorist activities. The released citizens are the pilot Golmerraza Gassemi and those Abdolazet Mohammadi, Said Valizadeh, Victor Manuel Perez, and Mario Arraga Urdaneta. In this context, the judge listed the seizure of the teleSUR plane, although the aircraft will continue to be seized at the request of the United States Justice. Venezuela, the death toll rises to 50 due to the landslide in the community of Las Tejerias that left at least 700 families affected. 2 elderly people were rescued from the heart of the mountain. Our correspondent Madeline Garcia brings us the details.
They are preparing for a new mission, this time to rescue 2 grandparents who live in the mountains, almost at the epicenter of the Las Tejerias landslide. From the 23 communities affected, 3 are incommunicated. They can only be reached by helicopter or walking for hours and hours. The red flags indicate that it is one of them. From above, you can see the magnitude of the catastrophe. Literally, the mountain fell down. 5 rivers converged in this creek, Los Patos, that in 60 minutes rained what in a month is registered, and grew, causing the catastrophe that left dozens of dead, disappeared, and over 700 families affected. We arrived at Mero Corazon, where on October 8th the mountain crunched and crunched, warning that it would take everything in its path. The ground was torn as if it were the uncontrollable cry of nature. On the ground, the rescuers, with Adelaida and her husband, two farmers who refused to abandon the only thing they have, their crops and animals. And the transfer began, leaving behind their memories and a long night where they witnessed the miracle of life, a humanitarian bridge that hasn't stopped since the first day. It's the national risk management system that is activated in the event of these disasters. Adelaida told, "The sky opened like a flood, as it was the end of the world. They prayed to God, but beyond they were worried about the noble people of Las Tejerías, who did not know what was coming and the impotence of not being able to warn them."
We were saved by our Holy Father Jehovah, and the perseverance, the struggle, and the constancy of wanting to live on.
They pointed out that there are still people to be rescued, at least 2 more elderly. At the heliport, where the Airspace Task Force, Civil Protection, paramedics, and firefighters who have come from all over Venezuela, waiting for them like heroes, survivors of a tragedy. They're safe and sound, but with the pain of having lost so many people, noble, good, and humanistic people.
Holding hands. What else can I tell you? I'm praying to Jehovah. Not for us, because we felt that we are safe. Our suffering was for the people of Tejerías, because we knew that everything was coming down.
Rescue and search efforts continue tirelessly until the last missing person is found.
teleSUR, Las Tejerías, Venezuela. We're going to take a short break now, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan visited the site of the coal mine explosion in Amasra, northern Turkey, on Saturday, where at least 41 people have been killed and rescue efforts continue. 11 were injured and hospitalized, while 58 miners managed to get out on their own or were rescued unharmed. The status of one remaining miner was unclear. Energy Minister Fatih Dönmez said rescue efforts were almost complete. Earlier he had said that a fire was still burning in the mine's gallery, where more than a dozen miners had been trapped. Preliminary assessments indicate that the explosion was likely caused by a fire dam, which is a reference to flammable gases found in coal mines, Dönmez said overnight. During a press conference following a summit in Kazakhstan, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that he doesn't seek to destroy Ukraine.
We haven't set ourselves to the task of destroying Ukraine. They cut the water supply to the Crimean Peninsula, where 2.5 million people live. Troops had to move in and open the water supply. This is an example of our logic. If the first action hadn't occurred, there wouldn't have a need for a counteraction. We'll have to think twice now, after the Crimean bridge has been damaged, how important it is for Russia to ensure communication with Crimea by land.
At a press conference in Astana, Vladimir Putin insists that Russia has no plans to expand mobilization in Russia following last month's partial mobilization, which called up military reservists to fight in Ukraine.
Nothing further is being planned. The Defense Ministry has not come to me with any further suggestions, and I see no need for it in the future.
When the Russian president was approached about the possible participation of Russia in the next G20 summit, this was his statement.
The issue of my visit to the G20 meeting in Indonesia has not been finally decided yet. Russia will certainly take part in this work. In what format? We are still thinking about it. And for now, there is no question of direct negotiations with any of the G20 members.
In Germany, as the country battles the energy crisis, the country's inflation rate hit 10% in September, a record high since 1990, the Federal Statistics Office said Thursday. An autumn economic outlook released on Wednesday by the German government expects economic growth of 1.4% this year and a contraction of 0.4% in 2023. Speaking at a press conference in Berlin on Wednesday, German Minister of Economic Affairs Robert Habeck noted that the current severe energy crisis threatens to become an economic and a social crisis and stressed that the country could slide into recession next year. The autumn economic outlook says the downward revision is attributed to the lingering Ukraine-Russia conflict and soaring energy prices, which have fueled inflation and dragged down industrial production. In the United Kingdom, the sterling pound depreciates this Friday after the foreign minister Kwasi Kwarteng announced his resignation. On his Twitter account, Kwarteng published a farewell letter where he confirmed that the country's Prime Minister Liz Truss asked him to resign as foreign minister, and he took her at her word. The former finance minister acknowledged that the economic environment changed since he presented his economic plan on September 23rd, which included a drastic tax cut, and added that a medium-term fiscal plan is crucial to demonstrate his government's commitment to fiscal discipline. Following Kwarteng's resignation, former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt will take over the finance portfolio. Environmental protesters threw tomato soup over Vincent van Gogh's famous painting Sunflowers at the National Gallery in London, demanding that the British government put a stop to new oil and gas extraction projects. There were two activists from the civil disobedience group Just Stop Oil, which calls for a halt to all new hydrocarbon exploitation projects in the country. After throwing the soup, they knelt in front of the painting and stuck to the museum wall. Painted in 1888 by the Dutch Impressionist master, the painting protected by glass, the museum said shortly afterward that the frame had suffered minor damage, but the painting was intact. Police stated that the activists were arrested for criminal damage and aggravated trespassing. This new action comes after 2 weeks of protests by the group in the capital against oil drilling. More news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization warns of increasing hunger in the world at present. According to FAO official data, currently more than 3 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet. The UN organization also warned that every 4 seconds a person dies of hunger on the planet, a situation that, according to the organization's authorities, has worsened due to the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and the international crisis. Meanwhile, regarding the food agreement reached in July by the United Nations, Russia, Ukraine, and Turkey to supply grains and fertilizers to international markets, FAO recalled that it expires in November and insisted on the need to renew it, since failure to do so could lead to 13 to 20 million more hungry people in a year. "15 days after the last coup d'etat in Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was appointed as transitional president by a national forum composed of representatives of the main sectors of the country. Traoré was unanimously elected in the context of the forum composed of more than 300 people. The forum brought together spokespersons of the main political parties, civil society, religious groups, and security forces in the capital city of Ouagadougou. In this regard, the meeting served to adopt several points of the transition charter presented by the military authorities, which establishes the transitional presidency as the body in charge of the head of state and government, while stipulating that the transitional president may not run in the presidential election scheduled for 2024. According to the head of the IMF's African Department, Abebe Selassie, Sub-Saharan Africa is facing its most challenging environment in years, with the region's pandemic recovery interrupted by rising inflation, rising interest rates, and the global slowdown. Food and fuel prices have increased the cost of living, which has hit Sub-Saharan Africa particularly hard, as a large portion of the region's income is spent on food.
So there is, if you will, some slowdown in growth. But even more problematic, even more harmful, of course, is the effect that the global shocks have had on things like the price of food, the price of fuel, which have all raised the cost of living. And given such a high share of income in the region goes towards food, this has been a really big source of dislocation. Important priority for governments across the region is to make sure that this food insecurity challenge is addressed head on. So I think a lot of emphasis on economic policy and allocation of resources towards making sure that food security is addressed is the #1 priority that we see at the moment. And then second, the drivers of cost inflation, have to be tackled.
About 6.7 million Somalis are expected to face high levels of acute food insecurity, warned the Food and Agriculture Organization representative in Somalia.
The current drought is the worst that we have seen in the last 4 decades. It has affected about 7.8 million people. So that just put things in perspective, this is about half of Somalia's population. 90% of the country is facing extreme drought. Women and girls are being forced to trek much longer distances to access water, shelter, which also makes them more vulnerable to gender-based violence. Of course, we should not wait for a famine declaration to act, because then it will be too late. We know from 2011, when we faced a famine situation and a famine declaration, that by the time the famine was declared, half of the 260,000 people who died had actually already died.
We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.